Hello, and welcome to the Digital Workspace Works podcast. I'm Ryan Purvis, your host, supported by our producer Heather Bicknell. In this series, you'll hear stories and opinions from experts in the field, stories from the front lines, the problems they face and how they solved them, the areas they focused on from technology, people and processes, to the approaches they took that will help you to get to the grips with the digital workspace inner workings. Welcome, Asaf, to the Digital Workspace Works podcast. Do you want to give a brief introduction to yourself?
My name is Asaf Darash. I am the founder and CEO of Regpack, which is an onboarding and payment platform for the service industry. We work with a lot of extracurriculum organizations, courses, after-school programs, adult education, educational tourism, camps, stuff like that, conferences. Our platform allows basically any service-based business to create an onboarding process that is exactly according to their needs. And then from there, it allows them to select the services that they want, do e-signs, issue payments, and we have some unique offerings connected to installment payments that is connected to the service industry. And that's about it. The company is stationed around the world. The majority of our activities in the US, UK, Canada, and Israel. We've been in this about 10 years, and we really enjoy helping these organizations which are bringing exceptional value to their end users and help them lower the amount of administrative tasks that they need to do.
Great. And I mean, that leads me nicely to the usual question is, what does a digital workspace mean to you?
I would say that a digital workspace, in a way, is what the world is today, I would say. Let's take a really nice example from what happened. And I think that COVID made a major difference to the change. In the past, we were a company that we had a huge office in San Diego. We would only hire people from California or from Israel. And then COVID came in. And suddenly we understood that when you have a digital workspace, meaning that you can meet people all around the world just through the computer, you can have meetings from people from 3 different countries at the same time, at the same ease, something that would take a week to actually waste on it. Before, people get a work-life balance that is much better for them, and they become more productive and happier. So I think that the digital workspace means our ability to live our life in a way that is much more flexible and allows us to do a lot more with a lot less stress.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head for a lot of people. I mean, that's definitely my view on it as well. And, what you're talking about with onboarding, I think it's very easy to just think about that as just bringing somebody on to do something, but it's also managing them through, their journey, if you like, with the company that they're involved with, and then the offboarding as well. And because everyone is now comfortable with remote working and using different tools, you can reduce a lot of friction because the education gaps aren't as big as they were, where people weren't comfortable with using a Teams or a Zoom before. Now they are comfortable, and now they expect their level of a service to just be available that they can just use, to get paid or collect money or pay their taxes or whatever it is.
I totally agree. I think there are 2 nice stories that really highlight exactly the change that happened. And even though COVID was hard and a lot of lives were lost and all that, I think that COVID advanced the world by half a decade just by the fact that it happened. Let's say before COVID, if someone wanted to meet me or talk to me about something, it was obvious that we would need to meet in person. And then if I would offer them, let's meet just through the computer, it would seem odd, right? But today, when I do that and I ask them, do we need to do anything physical together? Do we need to touch each other? And the answer 99% of the time is no, right? So there's really no reason for us to actually physically meet. That's one thing that I think really changed. And the other one is actually what we're seeing with our clients. A lot of our clients before COVID or before, let's say, the last 2 years, they didn't see the idea of allowing their end users to onboard and put the information themselves, control their account, control their payments. They didn't see any importance in that. And now what's happening, it's actually coming from the ground up, because their clients are telling them, okay, how do I go and register or onboard online? Or how do I pay online? And if they tell them you need to send a check or you need to wire money or whatever, they're like, okay, I'm moving on. I'm going to someone else. Since
Yes.
I had a conversation with a large school in the US yesterday, and the trigger that caused them to look for a solution was that they told one of the parents, you need to come in and issue your payments. And they were like, this is 2023. What are you talking about? And they understood, okay, we need to change something considerably.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I was at the post office yesterday, and they wanted me to give them cash to pay for something. And I said, I don't carry cash. Why can't I just tap it? And like, no, this is an old process, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it just wastes so much time unnecessarily, because all it's done is create paperwork. It's created admin and a bit of frustration. So I'm very glad to hear of those sorts of things. Do you think people on the other side of those processes that have always done it that way, that sort of phrase, "We've always done it this way"? Do you think they realize the pain and they're changing, or are you seeing almost the disruption because of those that are willing to do it and cut the bureaucracy?
I think what's happening is there are two situations. One is that organizations that are attentive to their clients and their end users or their community, they understand that they need to change and that they need to move forward. And I wouldn't even say move forward. They just need to get into the situation that everybody else is doing, right? They
Yes.
need to allow people to control their accounts themselves. They need to allow people to edit things. They need to allow people to do something at 12 at midnight. And it's really powerful, especially in the educational organizations that we work with, where parents there are slammed, right? Like when you have 3 kids and you have a job, both parents are working, a lot of times you're doing these things at 10 p.m. or something. Now, if an organization demands them to come in or to talk to them on the phone or whatever, it's like it's not going to work. They just don't have time. So I would say that's one, that organizations that are attentive to their clients, and I would say the other one is the organizations that were not attentive to their clients and they're starting to decline, and then they decide, okay, we have to fix this because we have a churn problem, a major churn problem where people are leaving us, people don't want to work with us. And a lot of times what we see is that when there's personnel change that happens in the organization, they put the finger on it right away. They're like, this is the problem. This is why it's not working. And once they change that, a lot of times they see a major growth in the revenue come back.
It's interesting you say that when personnel change, because I think that's usually, people are the key to all this stuff. And when it comes to changing systems and the adoption of changing those systems, if the people aren't part of that journey, they become the biggest friction to that. And I don't know how common it is. I'm sure in the States it happens, but I know in some organizations we actually have periods where you have to be off for 2 weeks without any access. So we could see what impact that has on the business, not only from a process point of view, but also from a information security point of view and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's a good practice to take yourself out of a process and have someone else come in and look at it and go, why are you doing it this way? Like, should be cutting steps out here, or one form versus 5 forms. Those things are, only obvious when you're not involved in it all the time.
We actually see that a lot as organizations come to us. They try to replicate something that they already have. And it takes time to explain to them that moving something to the digital space is not just like copy paste. It's just like similar to if you write an article that will be read people will read on a physical newspaper, You need to write it in a different way than if you write an article that people are going to read on a computer, right? If you build a form, a form on a computer will function very differently than a paper form. And a lot of times we get big organizations, we especially see this in universities where they're slow to move, very heavy, big organizations where they say like, we want it this way. And we try to explain to them, yes, you can do it this way, but you're not taking advantage of all the changes that the technology can give you on one hand, and you're suffering for all the disadvantages because you're trying to create something that the computer is not good at. The computer, by definition, is good at repetitive processes.
Yep.
And anything that is repetitive, computerize it. Anything that is not repetitive, don't computerize it. And we actually see situations, and I think this is about digitizing work with clients. This is really important. We see a lot of times where they focus on the end cases. They focus on the 3 or 5% of people that have very, very unique needs, and they hurt the other 95% by creating a process that will allow those 5% or 3% to do what they need to do. And it's a real process explaining to them, look, you need to cater to the common case. What's important is to work something that will work for 95, 96% of your clients. The other 4%, it's totally okay to go manual on that. It's totally okay to add notes, to do something that your administrative staff will need to do something, but it's only 4%. But if you actually create a process that those 4% can also do it by themselves, you're going to make it miserable for the other 94, 96%, right?
Sure.
They will need to do so many steps that they will tell you this is terrible. So it's really a process of when an organization goes digital, it's really a process of understanding how to do it. And I think that it's also really important to pick the right partner to do that with you, because otherwise they can come out of it with their clients being very unhappy and deciding that digitizing was a mistake when it wasn't. It's about how you implement it.
Yep. No, I mean you're resonating with. I'm thinking of all my failures in life where we've gone too complicated, or we've not stepped back and done that sort of thing. Most common denominator for the process, because most applications are forms going through a workflow and different workflows, and you just have to find the contextually important information at that point in time to provide to the person that's involved. Be it someone that's doing admissions, be it someone that's doing the financial stuff, or whatever it is. They need to see what they need to see, but you don't need everything. And often, if you look at some of the old systems, the problem with them is they had every single piece of data was on the screen because they built one screen for everybody instead of specific screens for specific roles. And a lot of the stuff you talked about, I used to do as process reengineering, which is going through those processes and thinking about it from the context of each person. What do you need to know here? What does the student need to know? What does the admissions person need to know? What does the finance person need to know? So this really, great insight to what you guys are doing. Do you do some sort of, and I'm curious, when you do the sort of conversion from, say, analog to digital, do you do some sort of value calculation, some sort of return on investment, or by going down the route with, say, your product or your process?
Normally we don't. Since the ROI is so high, it's so it happens so quickly that it's a little ridiculous to do that. For example, when organizations turn it on the installment plan option that we offer in the application, they see an average of 25 to 30% revenue growth right off the bat, just by allowing installment plans. So a lot of times working on ROI is sort of like, okay, so you paid $2,000 and you're getting 200,000. So yeah, like you covered it in a day and a half, right?
Yep. Yeah, true. And I think, I have this problem with some of the stuff that I do as well. We have some really big numbers, and no one believes them because the numbers are really big. And often those return on value conversations are not necessarily money back in the bank account, because it's saving staff time or you're repurposing the money elsewhere. But with what you're talking about, yes, you could definitely see top line revenue changes because you're cutting out a whole lot of noise and bureaucracy. And as you said, people go with their they don't like what they see, they move somewhere else because there's so much competition that are doing it. So
one of the things that would be really helpful for organizations that are on the fence and that they don't really know if they want to do this is that we explain to them that they're changing the structure of their labor.
Yeah.
Whereas today, when they're not digitized, their workforce is basically the workforce they have in the office or that is on their payroll. And once they go digital, they change the fact that their main workforce is going to be their clients because they are doing most of the work for them. They're going in, they're filling out the information, they're selecting everything. They're doing everything that beforehand they had 3, 4, 5, 10 people doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So once you explain it to that in that way, where basically you're changing the structure of your workforce and you're moving a lot of the work to your clients and not in a bad way, in a good way where it's a win-win situation because your clients are empowered since they can do their selections and do what they want faster without the need to contact you and at any time that they want. And at the same time, you guys are lowering the barriers of entry and lowering your costs. So, and at the end, also growing your revenue. So when we get a lot of objections where it's like, how can this be, or this is impossible that the ROI is so high and so forth, then once we explain that, I think it resonates much better since it's sort of, oh, okay, so I have 1,000 clients and they're actually, I'm moving a lot of the work to them right now.
Yeah, it makes me think of when I started university back in 2000. They had a very sophisticated onboarding process, to get us all in, but it was basically destroyed by having every person going to talk to another person who was typing in your details into the web application. And I remember even then, I mean, I must have been 18 or 19 time going, this is the most inefficient way to do it because I'm computer literate. I could just do this stuff. I could have done this at home. I didn't have to come in here to spend hours in queues because all I needed was my student card with my number on it. That was it. And, I think that's sometimes where people miss, and then that's back to your 4% thing. For the majority nowadays, people can do these things. There's always going to be an exception. Let the exception be handled however it is handled. So, I mean, I'm curious to know. I mean, are you I mean, you spent as mostly in education. I mean, what are you seeing now with? And we have to talk about generative AI to an extent. But are you seeing your customers now pushing now that they've sort of taken the pull and they're going down the route of digitalization? Are they pushing you with more and more requirements that you hadn't thought of? That's enhancing your product, or are you seeing AI becoming more and more prevalent that you can do a lot of things quicker for your clients before they even ask you? If you understand my two different sides of the same question.
I would say it's the second one. A lot of times what happens is that the organizations that we work with are less, it's not that they're not computer literate, but it's not something that they focus on. It's not their main interest. They are there to supply the educational needs or so forth for their students. So what happens a lot of times is that as we develop things that we know that will help them, we actually see something a little different where a lot of them are hesitant to implement the new changes and the abilities. And the way that we and a good example is the installment plans. We created an automatic installment plan option that allows it's basically most of the installment plans that people use today is buy now, pay later, right? Where you go in and you have a credit check. You basically are doing microfinancing. You're getting a loan for, let's say, $100, $200, or $1,000, $2,000, and then you're paying it in installments, right? The service-based industry doesn't need to have that structure because it's connected to space and time, right? If I do a course, the course is going to take 6 months. I'm pre-registering 4 months in advance. Probably they need the money in order to fund me as a student only 3 months in. That means that by definition, I can pay in 7 or 8 installments, right? And there's no financing needed. So we build an algorithm that knows how to make sure that they get financing, in-time financing for the
Yep.
organization, and then we can allow people to pay in installments without any microfinancing of the student and so forth. Now, when I explain it like that, any person who is a little bit connected to economics and so forth will be like, yeah, this makes total sense. This is easy. Yes, let's implement this. With educational organizations, they're very hesitant for change in general, right? And then what we found the best way to do is say, okay, we implemented an A/B engine where we let them A/B test. Tell them, okay, let's put 20% of the people, expose them to this, okay, and see what happens. And then they suddenly see that the completion rate on those 20% is 95% versus the other 80% is, let's say, 80% or 75%. And they're like, wow, okay, can we move this to 100? And suddenly they grow their revenue by 25 to 30%. And then what happens is, as we start pulling out more and more abilities, they're less hesitant because there's a trust that was created between us and them, that they say, okay, these guys know what they're doing. They know what they're talking about. If they offer us something, let's just do it.
Yeah, and I think it's a great approach. I mean, the what if scenarios are always what put people into analysis paralysis. What happens if we do it this way? What if we do it that way? And you don't get anywhere. But I think doing A/B testing and that is a great way to show the value. And I think also, as you mentioned, the average person that's putting the data in is sophisticated enough to give you good feedback, to say this really worked or this didn't work, and that also helps the value proposition. So what are your plans, I mean, with the company? What are you guys doing this year that's interesting for the listeners that they'd want to know about?
So Regpack is growing into to more verticals. One of the unique things about Regpack is that we really have a technology. What Regpack is based on my Ph.D. On how you can build computerized systems that have no constants in them, where everything's a variable, right? Now, the service-based market is huge in the Western world, right? I think I remember reading a stat where it's like 65 or 70% of income in Western countries or developed countries is services. But when you look at that market is very, very fragmented. You see tons of software where, think of it like this: like if I want to go out and sell pens or watches, I will implement a software to sell stuff, right? I won't look for a software to sell pens or software to sell watches. Whereas that's exactly what happens in the service-based market. Like doctors' offices look for a doctor's office software. Camps look for a camp software. It goes so granular. It's like a conference would look for conference software, and an event would look for an event software. As if I didn't even know what the difference is between the two, right?
Yep.
And the reason for that is because of the onboarding process, which is unique for each vertical. And until the technology that was built by Regpack, you really could not service two different verticals, which, by the way, is part of the reason that the service-based market is hesitant to implement technology, because they're implementing a lot of technologies. Think of a school. A school does parent payments. They might do parent payments for special programs. They might also do a camp, an after school, maybe an adult's education, and they have a conference, right? So they're using 5 or 6 softwares, and they're a school. They're not like a multi-billion-dollar business, right? They're a school. They should not be using so many softwares. So they're very hesitant every time they implement more software, because it's like, okay, there's another layer and another software that we need to take care of and edit and so forth. And then what we found is that that when you explain to these organizations that they can do multiple things in one software, they really have that aha moment where it's like, wow, so we can actually do this, and this all in one place. So that is the plan for Regpack. We really want to become, I would say, the Shopify for services in a way, where we can offer these organizations the ability to have one place that they can go to, work with and implement their workflows, the onboarding processes, the payment processes that they need in a simple and easy way. So yeah, we have a few new updates that are happening. The automatic installment plans is something that happened this year. We also have new integrations that are happening that happen automatically. And I would say that the biggest thing that we're seeing in Regpack today is now that the downturn from COVID is slowly dwindling down, and we're seeing an up. We're really excited to help these organizations go into the future.
It's very exciting, and I'd love to read your PhD, purely because a lot of my career was around very much what you talked about, systems using no constant variable, and when I was sort of starting out, it was called dynamic case management, primarily, which was forms of data in going through small processes, but the object that it belonged to would always be accessible to go different directions, versus sort of traditional BPM where it has to go to like a train on a railway track. Has to go through each station before you could actually interact with the object. So I'm very curious to see how the product works, because I think that's where a lot of systems fall over, is because they have to become rigid at some point. And that becomes the sort of problem with the system, where the friction starts to develop. It was built for one sort of flow, and then the flow has to change, and now it's a big effort to change the system. Whereas if you guys are dynamic or fluid, as you're saying, that's a really positive move, because that's everything evolves all the time.
Yeah, it obviously creates problems for itself, because when everything is structureless, it's very hard, let's say, to search or to see patterns or stuff like that. But a lot of times the way that I explain it, because a lot of people that we work with are people that have kids and so forth, it's very easy to understand this analogy. So let's say all the systems out there, or systems that have constants in them, is the difference between Playmobil and Lego, right? Playmobil, like, you take it out of the box and it works right away, right? It just works, right? But it is what it is forever. If you took out a car, it will be a car forever. It can never be anything else. You have to have a very elaborate imagination to think that the car is a tree now, right?
Yes.
With Lego, you take it out, it doesn't work. You have to do something, right? But after you do that, you can decide it can be a spaceship, it can be a car, it can be a knight, it can be a house, right? And that's exactly the difference between Regpack and the other systems out there. The systems out there are Playmobil, which is, by the way, is very nice and comforting, because you just take it out and it works, right? But then, like you said, but now my need changes. Now I want to play with knights, but I can't, right? Because these are cars. And Lego maybe demands a little more work, a little more brain power, a little more creativity, but you have more flexibility to change. And I would say it's more connected to how life is, in a way. Life is very dynamic, and things are not always what they are forever, right? So I think that analogy really helps people understand the difference between a system that has no constants and a system that has constants.
Yeah, it's a great analogy, and that's exactly, as I say, the passion area that I've been involved as well. It's exactly that example, because often you're dealing with those variables are constant for that period of time, and they're going to change. And like you say, if you bought the Playmobil, you'd struggle. And you look at some of these ERP systems, or some of these big systems that people are putting in to do something. Often it's a huge overhead to keep it up to date, because it wasn't ever built to be kept up to date. It was meant to do it one way. No, that's a great analogy. If people want to get hold of you, what's the best way?
Go to our website, regpacks.com, or our LinkedIn is very active, and Instagram, LinkedIn. We also have a really good blog that helps people understand how to go through the digitization process.
That's fine.
Like we have use cases and stuff like that, where how organizations went through the process and what they understood. how they understood, like, okay, we need to give this up in order to gain something more. I have a few articles there connected to exactly like the 96% versus the 4%. I think these are things that are important, especially as the digital world is much more prominent than anything it was than how it was, let's say, 10 or 20 years ago. And I think that we're only at the tip of the iceberg. It's going to get I wouldn't say worse, but more prominent, right? It's going to be like the place of digitation in our life is going to be immense. So anyone who hasn't gone through the process or is struggling with the process, I think the blog will really help them because there's a lot of information, a lot of use cases of how people went through these things.
Fantastic. Well, I'll get a link from that so we can put that in the show notes. And great. Well, thanks very much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Heather Bicknell is our producer and editor. Thank you, Heather, for your hard work on this episode. Please subscribe to the series and rate us on iTunes or the Google Play Store. Follow us on Twitter @the DWW Podcast. The show notes and transcripts will be available on the website www.digitalworkspace.works. Please also visit our website www.digitalworkspace.works and subscribe to our newsletter. And lastly, if you found this episode useful, please share with your friends or colleagues.